Howdy everyone, and let's get straight into testing the living daylights out of a new lens from Chinese manufacturer Yongnuo, the 50mm f1.8 XDA DSM Pro. Yongnuo have been tinkering with 50mm lenses for a very long time now, and this Pro version of their latest model is for Fuji X mount cameras only, and can be found available online for about $300 US. Yongnuo actually make a much cheaper 50mm f1.8 lens for mirrorless cameras, so I'm curious to see what improvements this Pro version of the lens might have. It certainly has a more complex optical design, making it a lot bigger. I'd like to thank Yongnuo for sending me a copy of this lens for evaluation, although as usual this is a totally independent review. On a Fuji X, this lens is the full-frame equivalent of 75mm, so a short telephoto angle, useful for portrait and subject photography and getting generally out-of-focus backgrounds in your images. It can get you some beautiful pictures, so this is a very desirable focal length to use. f1.8 isn't an amazingly bright aperture for a 50mm lens, but it's plenty enough for shooting indoors or in darker conditions. The lens itself has good build quality. It's made of metal with a simple, functional design and a little OLED screen, which is one of my favourite gimmicks to see, albeit not a very useful one. The lens offers some weather sealing here, including a gasket around the metallic mount, always reassuring, although as usual I was too much of a wimp to submerge the thing underwater to test it. Oh, and there's a USB-C port on the side, also for future firmware updates. When the lens is set to mode 1, the large, rubberized, smoothly turning focus ring controls the lens's aperture. Turn it all the way past f16 to set the lens to auto aperture mode. Switch the lens into mode 2 and that focus ring becomes, well, a manual focus ring, which actually works very responsively, smoother than most of Fuji's official lenses, I might add. You can also see in this footage that the lens suffers from quite noticeable focus breathing, zooming in as you focus more closely. The lens's autofocus motor was very good in my tests, working quite quickly and reasonably accurately, and emitting a slight whirring sound which was barely audible but not completely silent. The lens comes with a circular plastic hood which clips in place nice and securely. It has a 58mm filter thread and no image stabilization. Overall though, I'm impressed with this thing's build quality. It's actually very good indeed. Yongnuo have clearly put some thought into it. Anyway, image quality. I didn't have an X-T3 camera to test it on this time, so this test was done on my old X-T3 with its 26MP aps-c sized sensor. Automatic in-camera corrections seem to be on. In the middle of the image, straight from f1.8, sharpness and contrast are excellent. And the very good news is that the lens is just as sharp in the corners of the image. This is a really impressive performance. You can't ask for much more. The lens stays this sharp down to f11, although stop down as far as f16 to see softness emerging from the effects of diffraction. Overall though, nice. Yongnuo have clearly let their designers go to town on this lens, as it's offering absolutely brilliant sharpness. Okay, let's bypass in-camera corrections by processing some raw images in third-party software to look at distortion and vignetting. As you can see, the lens projects only a negligible amount of pincushion distortion here, but the corners are pretty dark. f2 is about the same, but at f2.8 the corners brighten a bit. But even if you stop down further, that's as bright as the corners get. Some further good news is that this lens can focus really quite closely to your subject. I think I got about 40cm out of it, so that's really useful for shooting smaller subjects. At f1.8, close-up image quality is fairly sharp still, but contrast is much lower, and we catch some blue colour fringing on contrasting edges. f2 looks better, f2.8 looks excellent. Let's see how the lens works against bright light now. Yongnuo have clearly been investing into lens coatings here because it's a good performance. Some flaring is visible, but it's nothing too serious, and contrast remains high. Next, bokeh, and that's another strength of this lens as far as I'm concerned, as the bokeh in all my test pictures looked gorgeously smooth, no issues here. And finally, related to bokeh comes longitudinal chromatic aberration. Here is a slight weak point. At f1.8, colour fringing on bokeh highlights is quite noticeable. It's still there at f2.8 and even f4 to an extent, although at f5.6 it's mostly cleared up, so a slight hiccup there. Overall though, nice work Yongnuo. This thing is a little expensive for a 50mm f1.8, but its manufacturer has thrown everything they've got at it, and it puts in an excellent performance on almost all fronts, so it definitely comes recommended. Nice to see a manufacturer of lower budget lenses stretching its wings a bit, I think. Thanks for watching everyone, and a special thanks to my Patreon supporters who continue to make such a difference to keeping these sponsorship-free lens reviews coming. Check it out in the description below, as supporters get all kinds of extra bonus content. Ciao for now, everyone.